It's Arnesta Russell. God has been so good to me. He loosed my shackles, set me free. Oh, ooh, can't help but to tell you that he's been so good.
Today, I'm delighted to introduce you to Miss Arnesta Russell. Arnesta grew up in a housing project on the south side of Chicago during the Civil Rights Movement. She comes from a close-knit, talented family that's deeply rooted in church, music, and sports. Arnesta's parents were among an estimated 500,000 Southern blacks who migrated to the Windy City between 1910 and 1970. She shares the strong family values that her parents instilled in her, the influence of pastors, neighborhood block captains. She also talks about the men in her family who were basketball and baseball athletes. One would go on to play in the NBA, and the women in her family were singers and musicians.
It was called Allgale Gardens. I remember when Dr. King came to Allgale Gardens, and that saying was, "Before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave." I remember that as a child. I remember when President Kennedy came to Chicago in the parade, and I ran up to the car and waved, and he waved back. Yeah, he did, smiling. It was a sunshiny day, and the car, the top was rolled down. We were downtown, and I ran up and I waved, and he ran. I never forgot that. Big cities is what I've known, at relatives in Philadelphia. I was also raised in New York. I have a lot of relatives in New York, New Jersey. Finally got a chance to go to Alabama, where my dad grew up. New Brockton, Alabama. My oldest sister, Marguerite, was born in Enterprise, Alabama. And my second oldest sister was born in Pensacola, Florida. And the rest of us was born in Chicago. We had the block captain who looked out for us. And when that saying said, "It takes a village to raise a child," that was true. Her name was Miss Rogers, and she made sure the block was kept intact. Made sure that we were mannerable, made sure that we went to school, watched out for people if things didn't look right about who you were hanging with. She went to our parent and talked with the parents about it. And that wasn't somebody being nosy, but somebody who cared for how we were growing up. That was important. And she took the time to know the parents. And so if anything was to happen, she knew where to go and who to go to. I enjoy watching the Waltons on TV because they remind me of my family. And it wasn't 7 children, it was 5 children and 2 parents, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews, great nieces and nephews, and a family, then my pastor. I still keep in touch with my childhood friend. We were close friends. Yvette Clay Muse, my best friend, and Annette Kite, who's my best friend here. Being around my family and being in church, that was my fondness. And then I had special friends. And so like going to games that my brothers played, I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. So that was good. My dad was visiting in Pensacola, and my mom was one of the best cooks in the South, so I was told. And they met there. And in those days, you couldn't just go out and date. You had to ask permission. To this very day, it was the same thing. He couldn't sit in the car and blow the horn. You had to come up to the door, and you came in, and you were met by the parents, brothers and sisters too. And by me being the youngest, you really had to be in check. So she was from Pensacola, Florida, but it wasn't very far from Alabama because the southern states were kind of close. Dad was from New Brockton, Alabama. Well, the jobs in the South were mainly farming, but his sister had married a gentleman that worked for Wisconsin Steel. And so he told him about the jobs there. So he came to Chicago and been there ever since. So we had like cousins to migrate to Chicago, to New York, to New Jersey. And we're working on a family reunion where we caught up to the next generation. So we're excited about talking to one another. A lot of things I got in growing up with family, and I learned and I kept it. My dad, something he would say like, it's better to remain silent and thoughtful than speak and to remove all doubt. And we would just look at him like, okay. Because he was somewhat on the quiet side. My mother he was more the quiet, authoritative one, but he always had good wisdom. And my mother was more the vocal, the authoritative, because she raised the children. They both did, but she didn't play either. She raised the neighborhood as well. You do right. She always told us, and right will follow. My sister would say that. You do right, and right will follow you. Do unto others as you would have others to do unto you. She always put things like that in our mind. We went to church. I was in the choir, and really hanging out with my family. Sports and music ran heavy in the family. So I would say I had a good childhood life. I had two brothers that played basketball and baseball. My father, who was raised in New Brockton, Alabama, played baseball. And I recently found out that he played baseball so well that they say today that he hit a ball so far they still can't find it. And the Negro League wanted to draft him, but he couldn't because he was on the farm. But he played baseball. That was his favorite. But my brothers played baseball and basketball. Two brothers, two sisters. Famous basketball player, Arnesta Russell. He played at the University of Michigan, and then he played pro ball as well. And Michigan and Ohio rivals. University of Michigan. Yeah, he played for the New York Knicks. He played for the Chicago Bulls. He played for the Los Angeles Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. So like I said, sports ran in the house. Cassie and Donald Russell, yes. My sisters sing. We would go to a lot of places and they would sing. They have groups, and then sometimes the groups would come to the house and practice. So my mother made dinner for them. Everybody wanted to come over to the house, and she was better known as Ma. Thankful to have parents that raised me. Thankful. Not only did the parents raise me, but like I said, the neighborhood, Miss Charlie, Miss Franklin, Miss Britton, Miss Harris. Oh yeah, they were on us. Kept us in line. That was in Chicago. Yes. My one sister, Marguerite, she was with New Friendship Baptist Church in Chicago, and she sung this song so good. Part of it was, God has been so good to me. He loosed my shackles and he set me free. Oh, can't help to tell you that he's so good. And then she could play too. She could, oh my God, she still plays. My older sister's still living. She has 5 children and grandchildren, and then the sister that passed, she had one son, and I tell him all the time, your mother would be so proud of you, and we have been blessed. This family has been blessed, and we're still blessed. Our house was like the house of refuge, and when the kids would smell her cooking, they would come and sit on the porch. Do you know how to cook? She made ice cream, homemade rolls. Kids would tease me. She sing when she talked. And I'm like, no, she don't. But she did. She was a singer, and she would give them hot homemade rolls and anything to keep the children from being in trouble. So, like I said, everybody knew one another and tried to make it so. It was somewhere to go to stay out of trouble. Even as we grew up, one of my brothers would bring his team. He was a coach. Matter of fact, he got an award for it. Best coach of the year. He's still in Chicago. The other brother is in Florida. He was another one that looked out for young people. When we moved from Allgale Gardens, and my oldest brother brought the family a home, so my niece and her husband and family, they now live there. He cried when I left to come here. That was the first time I've ever seen my daddy cry. That was something. My mother did too. But when I got on the bus, I did too. This was something coming here. Well, my brother went to college, the ones I was telling you about. My oldest sister got married and moved out. Then the other one, well, she stayed around, then she moved. But the 2 brothers moved away to go to school. They got scholarships to school. And I remember that day when Cassie left, my dad just walked up the block. He couldn't take it. My mother cried. We were getting ready to go to church too. And I was upstairs. And I'm like, where's he going? And so when he went away to school and when we went up to visit, couldn't understand why they weren't living in that house again. But it turned out for the good. It turned out for the good. So it didn't sit well with my dad. And I just told him, I said, I'll be all right, Daddy. I'll be all right. My dad passed away in 87, 2 days before Christmas. And my mother passed away the week of Easter. I said, boy, you children know how to go home, don't you? And it was standing room only. Service started at 10. We didn't get out till 3:30. That's the type of person she was. We danced. Crying and dancing at the same time. So, makes no difference what the problem. I can go to God in prayer. Yes, I have one who's so faithful. I can go to God in prayer.
Arnesta moved from Chicago to Ohio's gem city of Dayton in 1981, and she moved on faith. She said she felt the Lord led her to come here, and after going to school and working different jobs, Arnesta would find her calling working with youth and helping to guide the next generation.
So I've been here since 81 to get away and to finish my schooling. And I was going to only stay to finish, and I ended up staying. I met some good people, and of course, church, and got jobs, and I ended up staying. So the longer I stayed, the more familiar I got, and I learned a lot, and I got a chance to be around some good people. I moved here in 81. I was going to go to Central State, but I ended up going to Sinclair first. I had some great professors there. I learned a lot. And then I took courses at Wright State. I liked the classes in sociology. I had one of the best teachers, Mr. Minor, Harold Minor. He was in sociology. He enjoyed his class so much that he was creating other classes, and we would sign up for it too. And then Mr. Mulligan was in the community-based correction. That's what I had my degree in. I've always liked children and working around people. And my mother always taught us, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. So you treat people with kindness. And so therefore, that's what made me get into it. I worked for the NYC Neighborhood Youth Corps. It was in Chicago. So they would, the mayor at that time, Mayor Daley, they had gotten, I guess what they call like grants for us to work, to do something positive in the neighborhood. So we did. And some of it was that to keep the neighborhoods clean. It was something to get us involved and to understand what it was all about. I ended up also working at Dayton Job Corps, working with young people, and then come to find out that a lot of them had come in from Chicago. And so, well, did you know? And that was interesting. They told me that I was tough, but in the end, they appreciated it. And I understood, being raised by my parents, I see a lot of things in working with the youth, what they meant. And they were good. They had their issues, but I was glad that they felt that they could come to me and talk to me about things. A lot of them went away to school. Some worked their trade, like being a chef, and others have done some positive things. And every now and then I would run into them, and it was just good to see them. Miss Russell. That was interesting. I was glad for them. And I was just thankful that the Lord let you see your labor of work and of kindness. And good to know that they turned something negative into something positive. So I have children who call themselves my children, and that's a blessing. I saw it when I really started working at Job Corps, because they started calling me mom, because I was on their case about a lot of things. When they were supposed to be up on the dorm at 10 o'clock, and I told them, said, come here to me. Tell me why you're late. Then some of the older guys who really had, because I worked on the male dorm as well as the female dorms, and they would step up to her and say, you don't talk to her like that. And one time I told her, says, I got this stick with your name on it. Now try that again. And they thought I was mean, but when they moved me on the other side to the girl, they got mad. They protested. And so then I worked for Places Incorporated, and then that's when I retired. Places Incorporated, where we worked with handicapped. I had some good groups. They were more sufficient. I had a good time with them. And when I got ready to leave, there were tears. Some left out just so they wouldn't have to say goodbye. And then I've seen a couple of them, and they would hug, how you doing? Where are you? You okay? You could at least come back to visit. I'm like, I know, but I stay on the go pretty much.
Arnesta's faith is a big part of her life. Her relationship with God is a number one priority. Her family spent a great deal of time, a lot of time in church. She talks about the queen of gospel and civil rights activist, Mahalia Jackson, a family friend, who spent time at her home.
Life, health, and strength, and my relationship with the Lord, my family. God the Father, he's the parent. So I go to him in prayer. He can work it out. A lot of times it's already working out. I just asked him to open my eyes to let me see. So there are things that I missed. Have I been disobedient? Some things, yes. But when I came back, he knew I was coming back. Some things I did I'm not always proud of, but at the same token, he's a parent. He understands. He's not the God that just has to punish you all the time, but in loving kindness, he extends himself. He did that on the cross. God Almighty died for us all so that we would have the right. Those 21 people that were shot to death didn't get a chance. That gentleman that was shot 60 times, those other children in school, they didn't get a chance, but you do. You got a chance. Make it count. If we would turn our face back to God and not our backs, we will find that he's a loving and kind God. And it's not his will that any would perish. It's not. That's why he keeps giving us chance after chance after chance. He's the God of a second after second after second chance. And with all of this stuff going on, God still shows himself great. That's what I stand on, his word. That's what I believe. His word through Christ Jesus. They can't do no more than what he allowed. And because it's not his will that any should perish, he's given them a chance to get it right. He gave us space and time to get it right. So I find that I have more to be thankful for than I have to complain about. I'm not saying that things go my way all the time, but the majority of it, it does. I'm appreciative. You have to rely on him. He's the keeper. He's your peace. Whatever you need him to be, he's that and then some. I'm aware of what's going on. He gives his angels charge. So therefore, I apply scriptures to what I do. I won't say that I do everything right. I have my moments. Now, sometimes I ask, okay, Lord, how did I do today? Did I do all right? I've had my faults, but when you go to him with an honest and sincere heart, he hears the contrite heart. He hears it. My mother taught us how to pray. She always told us to keep God first, always. In all thy ways, acknowledge God, and he'll direct your path. He knows all the shortcuts. Woo! And you can't make it without him. I don't care what you try to do. Church played a big role in my life. We were at church all day. They had them sisters that would fix the dinner. We didn't have to go anywhere. We sat there from Sunday morning to Sunday night. That was our therapy. That was our place to go. And that's how we met up with a lot of people and did a lot of things together and had fun. I had a good church in Chicago. It was Central Avenue Baptist Church. And then we later moved. My brother wrote his name on the back of the chairs, and it's still there. And that's something, the history. And so it came to Maryland Avenue, Reverend David D. Clay, and his daughter and I were best friends. We were best friends. And then Reverend Norwood. He's 89 years old. Still looking good, too. When I first came here, I would go to different churches, but I ended up being at Mount Enon. Left Mount Enon and went to Phillips Temple. And so I just still visited churches like Gateway Cathedral, Church of God in Christ, and also attended Grace House. And I've enjoyed them all. Inspirational Church. Different ministries, what they had to offer so far as the Word of God through Christ Jesus. Whatever I could do to help out, I did. They pretty much keep in touch. God has been so good to me. He loosed my shackles, set me free. Oh, can't help but to tell you that he's been so good. Alto, you could tell it. I played the piano a little bit, but my sisters really played. One sister had passed, but she played the piano and the organ, and the other sister played the piano. So we would sing a lot, and when they would go out to various musicals, I wasn't allowed to be out at night unless I was with them. But we would go to like places like to hear the Caravans, James Cleveland. A lot of time was spent in church, and I didn't mind that because it was a good place to be. I like the one that Albertina, I can go to God in prayer. Makes no difference what the problem, I can go to God in prayer. Yes, I have one who's so faithful, I can go to God in prayer.
Oh. I love it.
I love singers like Albertina Walker, Inez Andrews, Shirley Caesar, old school. I like Ricky Dillard. I like all of them. By the way, my mother and Mahalia were good friends. I didn't know who the woman was that came to the house until later on. And my mother would sit and play the piano. Mahalia could play too. And all I know is just people would come into the house and she would cook for them and they would get together and sing. It was Dr. Molly Mae Gates, Mahalia Jackson, and Maddie Russell. She did her first record, Jesus, and she recorded it in Pensacola, Florida. She knew Thomas Dorsey too. Jesus, your name the sweetest I know. She sung with Martin Luther King. Yeah. Well, she didn't sing with it, but she sung for him when they did the march in Washington. But she would come by the house. They would sing a lot, and I didn't realize, But I would watch them, because it would be different people coming. Different groups would come to the house, and they would have rehearsal. And by my sisters playing, they had their little group, and my mother had her group. My dad could play too. I called his music ragtime. Mahalia Jackson played. She sung everywhere. But I would watch them as they would sing and didn't realize who she was. And then as I got older, coming by, sometimes people would stand around our door. I remember when she had gone into the hospital and she had gotten really sick, and I was going to Cook County, coming out, and I heard it on the news that she had passed. And I told my mother, I said, your friend Mahalia passed away. And she just cried. She just cried because that was her buddy. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. Let me stand. My faith on heaven, faith on tableland. No higher place than I have found. Plant my feet on higher ground.
Arnesta's journey led her from the St. Vincent homeless shelter to her current home in Twin Towers Place Apartments in Dayton, Ohio. She talks about what it's like to live in the Twin Towers and the strong relationships she's built there, especially with her service coordinator, Stephen Wright, and with her property manager, Angel Lowe.
I knew big cities all my life, and when I came here, most people asked, well, how did you get here? I felt as though that the Lord led me. Before I moved into Twin Towers, I stayed in the Y on 3rd. I'd never been here before. Sometimes it wasn't easy because I didn't have a job for a little while, but I was still looked out for. It's the YWCA on 3rd. Virginia Rextra was over housing, and she was like a mother figure. And she's seen about us. She took care of us and made sure that she really looked out for me by me moving from Chicago. She was like a mother figure. And when I called home and let them know, I'm all right. I got some people looking out for me. Met a lady there who told me about her church, and I went. So I says, okay, I will. And so she invited me to church. And so I had a home. So, and when I finally got the job, I was, that's when I started working with the after school program. And then it was like I was moving to higher heights. So, but I would always go back and see Miss Rextra and see how she was doing because she looked out for me. And I appreciated her for that. She was over the housing where you rent the apartments there. And I had a real nice apartment. I remember she asked me, she says, would you allow them to come in and see your room? Because I kept my room pretty good. It wasn't that big, but it was home for me. When I moved here, that was the first home. I was all over the place. I traveled right in this city. I was living at St. Vincent, and I had never been in a place like that. But I was glad I went because I got a chance to meet people. And one day I was sitting up scribbling in my Bible, and the lady asked me, says, what are you doing? I says, well, I highlight things so it jumps out to me. And they started asking a lot of questions. So there was a church that I called, and they donated Bibles for me, for them. And the pastor said, I'm so proud of you. He said, because you didn't ask for money, but you asked for Bibles to help. And I asked them, I said, if I get you all Bibles, will you really read them? They said, yes. I said, okay, it's on. And then at night, I would pray. We would pray at night. And they would come and just said, we needed it. We needed it. And so they looked out for me there. Had a good director there. Had good people there as well. They served food and you almost didn't want to leave. I lived at the Fountainhead, and then I moved after that, I moved on to Riverside apartment. I lived on Bennington too. I think I got the best apartment in the building, even though the apartment's like mine. The moon shines really bright in my room, and I love it. It looks like it's so close, and then I'm like, thanks, Lord, I appreciate it. I get a chance to see your handiworks. When I came here, it was like peace. And Angel has made it to be so livable. She really looks out for the well-being of the people here. She works hard. Stephen also. Angel, she's made this place livable, easy to talk to. I really do. Thank God for her. This building is very blessed. You get so much food, like the prophet Elijah when he told the mother to feed him. And then when she did that, she obeyed. The more she poured, the more food came out. That's how it was. Ooh, and it seemed like the more that was given away, the more we got. This is a very blessed building. I believe that. I wanted this apartment prior to, but didn't get it. And when I walked, and I asked her if I could talk with her. And when she first got here, and I said, I don't want to bombard you, but I just want to say this to you. And I explained to her about wanting and needing to be in like a larger place. She told me what I needed to do, and I did it, and I got it. And she made sure that I was doing okay. And that's what she does. She checks on the tenants and makes sure that we're doing okay, and we can always talk to her. That's the difference. Being able to talk to your building manager, and hardly ever is her door closed. It's open, and she always greets you. How you doing, ma'am? Or how you doing, sir? She makes it livable. She really does, and I appreciate that. And we got like that board out there where we can read about like whatever announcements. The TV, not just the board, but the TV. And then they have different people that come here, like different insurances, like United Healthcare, Humana, and Aetna, and Anthem. So where we can pick and choose. And then we have like all kind of little projects. I did enjoy my place on Bennington, but when I came here, it was like peace. It was like peace, and Angel has made it to be so livable. She really looks out for the well-being of the people here. She works hard. She does. She really looks out for the benefit. Stephen also have classes and things like that. But Angel has really she's made this place livable. She has. And I appreciate her quite a bit. I really do. Thank God for her.
It's been more than 3 decades since Arnesta moved to Dayton, bringing with her a strong faith in God and the influence and inspiration to make her community a better place. Now she's working to advocate for the senior population. She's working to be a voice for the elderly.
working with my state representative about being a liaison for seniors. And I also talked to some in Columbus, and I said it took me getting this age to see how seniors are treated, and it's not sitting well with me. Businesses feel as though they can just do people any kind of way because they're seniors. And some of them won't fight back, but here's one that will. I will get you. They've paid their dues. And to be treated any kind of way, it's not a good thing. Having to pay more than what is normal, whether it be cable, whether it be a bill. And when I talk to people, I'm finding out that seniors who get one check a month and then their medicine is costing them out to wazoo. And I asked them, would you want somebody to treat your family like this? Then why are they being treated that way? And I don't care for it. I speak my mind, I speak my piece, and I try to do it in a very diplomatic way. But if you don't hear me, you'll feel me. That's what my mother used to tell us. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. Let me stand. My faith on heaven, faith on tableland. No higher place than I have found. Plant my feet on higher ground.
Thank you for joining us on this St. Mary Development Profiles in Hope podcast. We invite you to reach out to us at www.stmary, all one word, .org, and share with us your thoughts on this episode, any favorite hope quotations or hope definitions, or any personal stories of hope that we might be able to include in future podcasts. We look forward to sharing Profiles in Hope podcast episodes with you, our listeners. And until then, may hope continue to live right under your roof.